Here is part 3 of the teaching, Fully Persuaded.
So this question, even if he doesn't, isn't that in the Bible? Have you heard this before? We've all heard this before. Even if he doesn't, I will still praise him, I'll still believe in him. And it sounds very noble. It sounds like I'm like a diehard Christian. Even if I don't see God come through, it doesn't mean, it's not going to shake my faith. It's not going to cause me to waver. I'm going to still stay committed to him. And that's a very good thing. We do need to be like that as Christians, as children of God. Even though circumstances don't look like we want them to look, we still trust God to come through with what he wants to come through with. But what I wanted to talk about is this idea that this, even if he doesn't, is actually faith destroying. It creates 2 out of 3 faith. And we saw that 2 out of 3 faith will get no results. And so what's happened is people have not gotten results and gone, well, okay, then this, even if he doesn't think it needs to become an even more central part of our walk as Christians, I want to look at where we've gotten this idea of even if he doesn't, and and show you that it's not even in the Bible. It's part of what. Anyway, let's go. We're going to go to Daniel 3. We're talking about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These are 3 Jewish men in Babylon. The king of Babylon at the time is King Nebuchadnezzar. It's a big word, it's difficult to spell. And what King Nebuchadnezzar has done is he's created a almost 30-meter tall gold statue. And he's made a command that when all these instruments are played, at the moment that the people hear these instruments played, all of them, everyone, every single person, must bow down and worship the statue. Have you heard the story before? And so what happens is these 3 Jewish men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who serve no other God but the God of Israel, Jehovah, Yahweh. They are not going to worship this God. And so when the music instruments play, words gets out that these 3 men, these Jewish boys, have not bowed. So what do you think King Nebuchadnezzar is going to do? It's going to punishment. Now he's stipulated that the punishment, if you don't worship my golden statue that I've set up, we will throw you into a fiery furnace and you'll burn to death. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we're going to pick this up from verse 13 with this understanding of the story so far. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and fury, gave the command to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the gold image which I have set up? Now if you are ready at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, and electric guitar, with all kinds of music, and you fall down and worship the image which I have made, good. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king." Now I'll stop there for a second. I've just read this portion of scripture from the New King James Version, which I've spoken about is a literal translation, which to the best of the English language's ability will take the original Hebrew text, because this is in the Old Testament, which is Hebrew, take the Hebrew word and try and find an equivalent English word so that you have what we have before us. Some of it makes sense, some of it looks kind of strange English, but it's representing the original Hebrew text very well. Now I'm going to read to you verse 18, which is taken from a Bible paraphrase. We've talked about Bible paraphrases, which don't take the original Hebrew text and bring it to an equivalent English word. We take the idea that these Hebrew words bring and we put it into modern English words. So for example, the Message paraphrase, or the Voice paraphrase, or the Good News translation. These are Bibles that will take the idea that's given in the Hebrew language and translate it into language that we speak. Some words from here have been taken directly, some are added, some are taken away. It's good because it helps people who are new on the journey with Jesus or who are just trying to do some easy reading to get the grasp of what's being said. At the same time, because we're not taking the exact words, what can be said can actually not be what was said originally. And that's what I want to look at here. So we see verse 18, I'm reading from the Good News translation, which is a Bible paraphrase. We've just seen Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego say, if you do, our God is able to save us, and he will save us. Remember we said the language of fully persuaded? Will. Do these people sound like they're in faith? Do they sound like they've got 3 out of 3 faith? He will save us. Then verse 18 out of the Good News Translation says, but even if he doesn't, your majesty may be sure that we will not worship your God and we will not bow down to the gold statue that you've set up. And that's where we get this idea of even if he doesn't. First thing, I want to warn you about Bible paraphrases. I'm not saying that they're wrong. They can be very helpful. But I would always like you to, and us, always like us to, when we're studying the Bible, to have a literal translation and possibly go to a Greek or Hebrew lexicon, some kind of Bible translation, just to get an idea of what the original text said. Because words have been added here. I'm going to read a few other paraphrases. In the Living Bible, but even if he doesn't, please understand, sir, that even then what? And what has happened to us? We're dead. Even then, we will never, under any circumstances, serve your gods or worship the gold statue. You won't. There's no dispute about whether you're going to or whether you're able to. You are dead. Okay, the Message translation, also a Bible paraphrase. But even if he doesn't what? Save us from the furnace, which means we're dead. Even if he doesn't, it wouldn't make a bit of difference. Really? Really, it wouldn't make a difference? O king, we still wouldn't serve your gods or worship the gold statue you've set. Really? Is this sounding stupid? The Voice Bible translation. But even if he doesn't, which again means God doesn't save them from the fiery furnace, they are dead. O king, you can be sure that we will still not serve your gods and we will not worship the gold statue you've erected. Now, if someone was not a Christian and they were an atheist or they were just against Christianity, they would have a lot of ammunition to fire at us about how inconsistent the Bible is, how ridiculous the Bible is. That the Bible would say to us that these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, said to the king, O king, our God is able to save us from the fiery furnace and he will save us. But even if he doesn't, it doesn't make a difference. Even though we're dead in the furnace, we will not serve your gods. Can you see what this is saying? These are Bible paraphrases. So now we need to go, okay, is the original Hebrew text actually saying this? Because if it is, then our Bible's messed up. Does that make sense? But our Bible isn't. Let's go to the original Hebrew text. And what we're going to do, because we don't speak Hebrew, is we're going to go look at a literal translation. We're going to look at Young's literal translation, which is older English. It's a little bit difficult to understand, but it does translate almost word for word to the best of the ability of the English language. We're going to look at the Young's literal translation. I know you don't have it in front of you, so I'll just read it. Verses 17 and 18. Lo, it is, our God whom we are serving is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and from thy hand, O king, he doth deliver. This is Old English. Lo, it is. And lo not, be it known to thee, O king, that thy gods we are not serving, and to the golden image thou hast raised up we do by no means obey. Hold on, let me read that again. Thou hast raised up, we do no obeisance. Okay, so that's Young's. He is going, this is what the Hebrew text says, and we are taking every word and trying to bring an English equivalent, and it's difficult to understand, isn't it? But we have to analyze this. What we have is the New American Standard Bible, which is a literal translation. I like it. What the New American Standard Bible does is it will take the literal text and translate it, and sometimes because it's difficult to understand directly translated, it will add some words. But it does us a favor by putting those words in italics, so let us know that they've been added. So I'm going to read verse 18 from the New American Standard Bible. But even if he does not, let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. So the New American Standard Bible does say, even if he does not, but there are words in italics. What does that mean? They've been added.
Understood. What it's trying to say.
Say again?
When you say, but even if you did not, it's not just saying that. It's just saying that we would still worship God. Is that what it's trying to say?
Well, the New American Standard Bible is making that statement, but it's putting some of the words in that statement in italics, which tells us they've been added. So we've got the word but, which is not in italics, which means it is from the Hebrew word. Yeah? Even, italics. If it is from the Hebrew. So far we have but if. Then he and does are in italics. So far we've got but if, and then the word not is there. But if not, that's all it's saying. Even he does is not part of. So this idea of but even if he doesn't is not in the original Hebrew text. The original Hebrew is saying but if not, but if not. But if not what? So now we have to go back a bit. We're going to look at verse 15. Is this okay?
Yeah.
Is this getting your curiosity piqued?
Very much.
Okay, now verse 15, the second half of verse 15, King Nebuchadnezzar has done two things. He has made a statement and he's asked a question. Now, when you're having a conversation, you want to address statements and you want to answer questions, don't you? He's made a statement and he's asked a question. The statement that he's made is, but if you do not worship, you will immediately be cast into the midst of a fiery blazing furnace. That's the statement. If you don't worship this golden statue that I've set up, I'm going to throw you in the furnace. Here's the question after the statement. And what God is there who can deliver you out of my hands? All right, so the three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, have a statement to address and a question to answer. Is that correct? In the verses that follow, the original Hebrew text shows us them addressing the statement and answering the question. Addressing the statement, answering the question. So we look at verse 16. This is interesting because straight away there's a little bit of attitude about them. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to give you an answer concerning this matter." Bible commentators will give this idea that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are so convinced about who is going to save them that they're like, we don't need to tell you. We don't need to answer your question. It's almost like, we don't need to tell you. Our God is going to deliver us. This is the fully persuaded, that three out of three faith. We see this. Now they've got a statement to address and a question to answer. What is the question? Who is this God that's going to save you? What is the statement? I'm going to throw you in the furnace. Yeah? So verse 17. Finishing off verse 16. O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to give you an answer concerning this matter. What is the matter? You throwing us into the furnace. If it be so. If what be so? You throw us into the furnace. If you throw us into the furnace, which makes sense as you continue reading. Verse 17. Our God whom we serve. Can you see they're answering the question? They've addressed the statement, they're answering the question. Our God whom we serve is able to deliver us. But they don't stop there. Remember, we're talking about fully persuaded, 3 out of 3 faith. He's not just able to save us. What does 3 out of 3 faith believe? He will. He will. Remember that word, that certainty? He will save us. Our God is able to save us, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O King. This is 3 out of 3 faith. What Bible paraphrases bring out this idea of even if he doesn't, that's not faith. There's no ways they would have gotten results if they had that attitude. We talked about 2 out of 3 faith. What kind of results do you get with 2 out of 3 faith? Nothing. Bible paraphrases give this idea that these men had 2 out of 3 faith, yet got results. And so the world is going, cool, let's apply 2 out. Do you understand what I say when I'm talking about 2 out of 3 faith? 2 out of 3, I've heard, I'm applying actions to what I've heard, but I'm not too convinced about what will happen. The church, the world is being pushed to this idea that if you have 2 out of 3 faith, you're going to get results. Actually, no, wait. 2 out of 3 faith is more waiting for God to decide. You're not too certain. You just don't know what God's going to do. God's will is sovereign, and these things happen for a reason, and we just have to trust. This is 2 out of 3 faith speaking. 3 out of 3 faith says what? He will. 3 out of 3 faith says we're persuaded. Is this making sense? Yes. You following along so far? So let's see what verse 18 says in the literal. But if not what? If he doesn't, remember, they're addressing a statement and a question. Have they answered the question? Yes. So then they need to be addressing the statement. Did they address the statement in verse 17? Let's go back. I need to help you see this. If it be so, verse 17 says, is that what you've got? Mm-hmm. If it be so, if what be so? If you throw us into the furnace, our God will save us. So they've answered the question and they've addressed the statement. Now verse 18, they're addressing the statements again. But if not what? Worship your God. Hold on. The statement was, I will throw you into the furnace. Who's your God that's going to serve you? But if not what? If you don't throw us into the furnace. Do you understand that? The verse 17 says, if it be so, if you do throw us in the furnace, our God will save us. Yes. But if not, if you do not throw us into the furnace. And then they continue, let it be known to you, king, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. If you threaten us, and even if you don't throw us into that furnace, we're still not going to change the way we think, what we believe. We still serve one God, O king. And what did King Nebuchadnezzar start doing after that? That's not the answer I wanted. I wanted you to cave in. I wanted you to feel so scared that you eventually started to do what I wanted you to do. So now we're going to read the rest of the story, and this should get you so fired up, because this is 3 out of 3 faith talking, which is the kind of faith that gets results. Is that right? So verse 19, then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with wrath, and his facial expression was altered towards Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He answered by giving orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. Now you can see these guys are in trouble. You've pressed the wrong buttons. You've picked a fight with the wrong man. Verse 20, he commanded certain valiant warriors who were in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in order to cast them into the furnace of the blazing fire. Then these men were tied up in their trousers, their coats, their caps, and their other clothes, and they were cast into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. For this reason, because the king's command was urgent and the furnace had been made extremely hot, the flame of the fire slew those men who carried up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. How is that? The fire is so hot, the guys who are taking these 3 men to the fire, they get killed by the heat of the... This is intense. But these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire, still tied up. All right. Now this means business. Either what we believe is true or we're just deluded. Either God, what we said about him is true, or we're burnt to death. Does that make sense? Can you imagine being thrown into this fire that's been made so hot that the guys who threw you in got killed before? This is crazy. But this is what I want you to see about 3 out of 3 faith. So confident. Look, we talked about the woman pushing through the crowd, and it doesn't matter the risk, no timidity, so bold. But this takes it to another level, doesn't it? Where your life is at risk. Where you have a gun pointed at your head. Say that Jesus is a liar. 3 out of 3 faith goes, I don't care what you say. My God will save me. Yeah? Let's see what happens. Let's see what 3 out of 3 faith produces. Is this okay? Is this okay?
Yes.
Yeah? Then Nebuchadnezzar, we're in verse 24. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and stood up in haste. He said to his high officials, was it not 3 men we cast bound into the midst of the fire? They replied to the king, certainly, O king. He said, look, I see 4 men loosed, and walking around in the midst of the fire without harm. How does he know they're without harm? They're in a furnace. They're in a fire. They're walking around as if they're like, you're just taking a casual. These people are not screaming and writhing in pain. They're walking around loose, and there are 4 of them. There are 4 of them. There are 4 of them.
Wow.
Who's with them?
Jesus.
Who's with them to save?
Jesus.
Because these men have 3 out of 3 faith. Does this make sense? They are fully persuaded. My God is able, but he's not only just able, he is willing and he will save us. And here we see 4 men walking around loose, unharmed, in this furnace that killed the men who threw these people in. This is 3 out of 3 faith producing results. And he says, and the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods. There must have been something about the appearance of this man, this 4th man. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace of the blazing fire. He responded and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out. Come out. He's got enough faith in their ability to come out because of what he's seen. It's not like, oh, guys, let's just wait for the fire to burn out and then we'll drag them out. No, come out. You guys clearly can. Come out. You servants of the Most High God. What King Nebuchadnezzar has just witnessed is not only convinced him of the power of these men's word, but the power of the God they serve. You servants of the Most High God. You servants of the Most High God. Come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the midst of the fire. The satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's high officials gathered around them and saw in regard to these men that the fire had no effects on the bodies of these men, nor was the hair of their heads singed, nor were their trousers damaged, nor had the smell of the fire come upon them. It's like they weren't even in the fire. 3 out of 3 faith. No longer do we need to think, but even if he doesn't, because that produces 2 out of 3 faith. Are you understanding what I'm saying when I say 3 out of 3, 2 out of 3? Because I have to talk about the whole thing again if you don't understand. As long as you get that 3 out of 3 faith is I heard, I'm fully persuaded by, and I acted on. These men know their God. He's not just able, he will save us. And they go into this fire with boldness. And who is in the midst of the fire with them? The Most High God. An outstanding story. We listen to it in children's church and we get excited. But when you understand, if you put yourself in these people's shoes, the massive risk, the massive miracle, how God came through because these men would not be shaken. And the fallacy about this idea, but even if he doesn't, let's stop writing the songs. Let's stop preaching the sermons. Let's start getting people to have 3 out of 3 faith.
Yes.
Thank you for watching part 3 of the teaching, Fully Persuaded. This teaching continues in part 4.